Good day, Dr. Tara and everyone. Welcome to our group presentation for DBA 5224 Advanced Strategic Management. Today, we present our strategic case analysis titled Intel Corporation, Strategic Repositioning in a Fragmented and Politicized Semiconductor Industry. This is not a conventional turnaround case. Rather, it examines how a once dominant industry architect must rethink where and how sustainable competitive advantage is created in an industry shaped by AI acceleration, extreme capital intensity, and geopolitical intervention. I'm Rosania, and I'm joined by my colleagues Lynn, Gurpreet, Mazwin, and Gubachan. Together, we will walk through our diagnosis, analysis, evaluation, and strategic recommendation. Before we begin, allow me to give a brief introduction to our case study, Intel. Founded in 1968, Intel Corporation has been one of the most influential leaders in the global semiconductor industry. Its historical dominance was built on the Integrated Device Manufacturer, or IDM model, which tightly coordinated design, manufacturing, and scale, particularly in x86 processors. However, as the slide shows, the industry landscape has fundamentally changed. Intel now sits at a critical strategic inflection point where it must simultaneously restore technology, credibility, financial resilience, and strategic relevance. To set the context, the semiconductor industry has undergone a structural shift. Competitive advantage has moved away from vertically integrated models towards specialized ecosystem-based value chains. Advanced node manufacturing is now concentrated among a small number of players, while AI-era value increasingly accrues to platforms, accelerators, and advanced packaging. Against this backdrop, Intel faces a core strategic problem. How can Intel restore sustainable competitive advantage while funding an expensive manufacturing and foundry repositioning in a high-risk politicized industry? This problem manifests through three strategic tensions: technology execution versus speed, capital intensity versus financial sustainability, and policy alignment versus strategic flexibility. To understand why this is not simply an execution failure, we begin with the external environment. Lynn will take us through the Pastel and Five Forces analysis.
Thank you, Rosania. Pastel analysis explains why Intel's challenge is structurally constrained rather than cyclical. Politically, semiconductors have become national security assets. Government initiatives like U.S. CHIPS Act provide Intel with substantial capital support and geopolitical relevance, but it comes with strict milestones, governance requirements, and public accountability. This reduces Intel's strategic discretion and increases reputational risk if execution falters. Economically, AI and data center demand creates strong long-term growth prospects. However, semiconductor economics remain highly asymmetric. High fixed cost means that underutilized fab rapidly destroy value. This makes timing and sequencing of investment decisions strategically critical. Socially, talent scarcity and Intel's recent execution challenges have weakened stakeholder trust. In this industry, credibility is not just reputational. It directly affects customer willingness to commit high-value designs. Technologically, the basis of competitions has shifted away from pure CPU performance toward heterogeneous compute, advanced packaging, and software-enabled platforms. Environmental and legal factors further constrain Intel through climate-related supply risk, export controls, and subsidy compliance obligations. Collectively, these forces create a highly constrained, politicized environment where strategic mistakes are costly and slow to reverse. Porter's Five Forces reinforces the severity of this constraint. Competitive rivalry is high. Intel faces pressure from AMD in CPU, NVIDIA in AI ecosystem, and TSMC in advanced manufacturing. Each competitor dominates different profit pool, leaving Intel strategically stretched. Buyer power is strong, Hyperscalers and large OEM possess deep technical capabilities and multiple sourcing options. For Intel's foundry ambitions, buyer demand demonstrated yield, reliability, and delivery, not strategic intent. Supplier power is also high due to the concentration in advanced lithography tools, materials, and equipment. Scaling capacity is therefore not only capital intensive but also supplier constrained. The threat of substitute is moderate to high as ARM-based architecture, accelerators, and system-level optimizations reduce dependence on traditional CPU. While barriers to entry remain low, step-back entrants distort normal competitive dynamics. Overall, the industry penalizes unvalidated skill and rewards execution credibility rather than ambition alone. Gilbert will now take us through Intel's internal capabilities to see how well it is positioned to respond.
Thank you, Lynn. Turning to Intel's internal resources, the VRIO analysis highlights why historical strengths no longer guarantee sustained advantage. Intel's x86 intellectual property and installed base remain valuable and relatively rare, supported by ecosystem lock-in and enterprise switching costs. However, this advantage is increasingly threatened by architectural substitutes and custom silicon adoption. Its manufacturing footprint and process know-how are valuable, but execution dependent. Without consistent yield and delivery performance, these assets generate only temporary advantage. Intel's foundry emission and combined with geopolitical policy alignment is rare and strategically important. However, it is immutable as other global players are also receive state support. Advanced packaging and heterogeneous integration represent a strong potential differentiator in this AI era, particularly if Intel can integrate these capabilities into compelling platforms. The key insight is that Intel's challenge reflects a dynamic capability gap, not a lack of strategic assets. Meanwhile, the value chain analysis identifies where Intel's strategic risks and opportunities are concentrated. Inbound logistics are constrained by dependence on a highly concentrated supplier base. For advanced tools and materials, this limits its ability to scale rapidly. Operations represent the core bottleneck. Process technology execution, yield learning, and fab discipline are central to both Intel's product competitiveness and foundry credibility. For outbound activities, foundry success depends not just on delivery, but on ecosystem enablement, including design kits, software tools, and predictable yields. Marketing and sales challenges are credibility driven rather than demand driven. Customers must believe Intel can execute consistently. Finally, service and developer ecosystems are increasing central to value capture, particularly in AI-driven workloads. This analysis reinforces that Intel's challenge is structural and execution-centric, not purely market-driven. Now, I'll close the internal analysis by translating Intel's financial and operating indicators into strategic implications. Intel's transformation is happening under capital intensity and operating rigidity. This matters because semiconductor manufacturing economics are driven by two realities: high fixed costs and utilization sensitivity. When fabs are underutilized, the cost per wafer rises sharply and the margins compress even if demand is there elsewhere in the portfolio. Second, Intel is facing simultaneous financial strain drivers: heavy capex for process nodes and new fabs, restructuring costs, and a credibility discount in capital markets whenever execution timelines slip. So, the strategic issue is not only can Intel build capacity, but can Intel fund and sequence that capacity without eroding financial resilience? Third, policy funding improves feasibility, but it's not free strategic slack. CHIPS linked support typically comes with milestones, reporting obligations, and reputational exposure, which increases the cost of missed targets. Hence, the financial story reinforces a core conclusion. Intel needs a strategy that is milestone gated, demand validated, and disciplined in sequencing rather than a single track expansion. With that, we have established the constraints and capabilities inside Intel. Mazwin will now take us into strategic alternatives, what Intel could realistically do from this point forward.
Thanks, Gurpreet. Based on the external pressure and internal constraints, our paper evaluated 4 strategies alternatives, and it is important to see them as different answers to the same tension: credibility, capital, and speed. Alternative A is full foundry first. This option prioritizes Intel Foundry as the primary growth engine. Essentially, betting the scale and advanced node execution will restore competitiveness. The strength is strong policy alignment and sovereignty positioning, but the weaknesses is that it is the highest risk path in front-load capex before customer demand is fully committed, and foundry customers do not migrate based on announcements, they migrate based on yield, delivery, predictability, and trust. Alternative B is hybrid IDM 2.0 with selective externalization. This is a balancing strategy. Intel keeps its product differentiation where it still matters, selectively outsources where external fabs are more economical or faster, and scales Intel Foundry in a customer-led, staged manner. This reduces underutilization risk and creates flexibility, while Intel rebuilds credibility. Meanwhile, Alternative C is platform and packaging differentiation. This aligns where AI era value is moving, heterogeneous integration, advanced packaging, and system-level performance. The advantage is it targets higher value profits pool without relying solely on wafer scale competition. The challenge is ecosystem gravity. Incumbents already have strong platforms, therefore Intel must execute both technically and commercially to make this differentiation real. And lastly, Alternative D is structural separation. This involves separating the foundry to improve transparency, focus, and customer trust. It may appeal to customers who prefer neutrality, but it introduces complexity and can weaken learning synergies between design and manufacturing. And separation itself can be a multi-year distraction. So these alternatives range from a high-risk scale bet to discipline hybrid to architecture-driven differentiation to governance-driven separation. Now that we laid out what Intel could do, Gurbachan will walk us through how we evaluate these options systematically using QSPM.
Thank you, Mazwin. To avoid subjective selection, we applied quantitative strategic planning metrics QSPM, assigning attractiveness score 1 to 4. We derived these criteria directly from our analysis, meaning the weights reflects what matters most in the specific industry context. The highest weighted factors were technology credibility and execution. Second, financial stability. Third, customer trust and ability to win accounts, followed by strategic flexibility under policy constraint, AI era fit, execution risk, and resilience expectation. We scored each alternative using attractiveness score, not based on what sounds desirable, but on what is most feasible and value-preserving given Intel's current position. Results were: Alternative A, full foundry first, performs weaker on financial stability and customer trust because it demands massive upfront investment before proof is delivered. Alternative D, structural separation improves trust but loses points on flexibility and execution complexity because restructuring itself creates risk. Alternative C, platform and packaging scores well on AI era fit but still needs ecosystem fractions and execution capability to translate into sustained advantage. Alternative B, Hybrid IDM 2.0 scores the highest because it performs consistently across the most critical constraints. It supports credibility rebuilding, improves financial manageability, and maintains flexibility in a politicized environment. QSPM is appropriate here because Intel operates under simultaneous technology, capital, and policy constraint. It enables transparent evaluation of trade-off rather than optimization of a single objective. The results, Hybrid IDM 2.0 does not maximize any single dimension, but delivers the highest credibility, financial sustainability, and policy flexibility. This explains not just what we recommend, but why it is the most defensible path. Transition back to Mazwin, who will now present our recommendation strategy.
Thanks, Gurbachan. Our recommendation is Hybrid IDM 2.0, strengthened by 3 linked moves. First, stage customer validated foundry scaling. This means Intel expand foundry capacity only when it secures credible customer commitments and meets measurable execution milestones, yield quality, delivery predictability. The core idea is to shift Intel from a promise first posture to a proof first posture. Second, selective externalization, where it improves speeds and economics. Instead of trying to manufacture everything internally, Intel externalizes portions of production strategically, reducing capex burden, lowering underutilization risks, and improving time to market where competitors are moving fast. Third, targeted platform and advanced packaging differentiation. This is crucial because in AI era, value capture is moving towards system-level performance, packaging, integration, and ecosystem enablement. Intel must make packaging and platform complements a deliberate differentiator so that manufacturing investment converts into customer value, not just capacity. In short, this strategy aligns Intel's ambition with reality. It restores credibility step by step, maintains financial resilience, and preserves optionality under policy constraint.
We justify the Hybrid IDM 2.0 recommendation in 4 strategic grounds. First, industry economics punished unvalidated capex because the fabrication facilities fabs are high fixed cost asset. Intel cannot afford large capacity beds without proven demand. Staging foundries expansion reduces downside exposure and prevent value destruction through underutilization. Second, policy support is helpful but increases governance constraint. CHIPS-linked funding improves visibility but also raises accountability, compliance requirement, and scrutiny. Hybrid IDM 2.0 preserves flexibility but combining policy aligned scaling with selective externalization and milestone gating. Third, foundry competition is credibility-based and not narrative-based. Foundry customers are risk-averse and have low tolerance for execution failure. Intel must rebuild trust by demonstrating repeatable delivery performance, a staged approach anchored to validate customers' trends is the most credible pathway to win accounts. Fourth, AI era competition shifts value towards system integration. Even if Intel builds capacity, it must also still compete in AI era profits pool. Platforms and advanced packaging differentiations allow Intel to create value beyond wafer scale, strengthening the strategic logic of the hybrid model. So the recommendation is not simply moderate, it's strategically disciplined. It aligns the firm's execution realities with the industry's structural economics. To close a loop from the problem to recommendation, I'll pass back to Rosania to conclude the overall arguments of our case.
Thank you, Betty. To conclude, Intel's challenge is best understood as a strategy structure misfit in an industry shaped by AI acceleration, extreme capital intensity, and politicized industry policy. Our analysis shows that a single-track all-in foundry expansion would expose Intel to an unacceptable execution and financial risk, especially when customer trust is still being rebuilt. Therefore, the most defensible path is hybrid IDM 2.0 with staged customer-validated foundry scaling, selective externalization, and targeted platform plus advanced packaging differentiation. This strategy best balances the three tensions at the heart of the case: execution credibility, financial resilience, and policy realities. Thank you for your attention. We appreciate your time.